it's not about the end goal for me at all. It's about enjoying the ride to get there and how I become better at things while I'm doing that. And if I ever get there, like you said, there's the next thing's going to be right there waiting for me, right? Your brain, you'll recover a little bit, you'll smile about it, and you're like, okay, cool, what's next?
Hey there, Orthopreneurs. Here's another episode of the Orthopreneurs Podcast. And today, coming to us straight from somewhere in Connecticut is Dr. Mike DePascale. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Glenn. Happy to be here. Excited to get this going, man.
Yeah. Where exactly in Connecticut are we coming from today?
So I'm in New London right now. I actually live in Mystic, which usually when I say that triggers the Mystic Pizza thing.
No, come on, man. There's no Mystic Pizza. I go way back. I go Mystic. The Mystic Aquarium, man. Scrimshaw, baby.
Yeah, I live not far from either of those. Mystic Aquarium's right by me, and I can actually walk right down to Mystic Pizza. So Southeast Connecticut is the answer. But
right on. Yeah, you're coming straight from the ESPN studios, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is in Connecticut too. But I remember you just brought back some memories right there, man. You like Mike and I are talking before this, and like, what are we going to talk about? What kind of things are going? And I'm like, we're going to find. I'll find a rabbit hole to go down. And now I'm onto Scrimshaw, which incidentally, for those out there who don't know, is art. I think drawn into the whalebone or something. Not that I expect you to know that, but.
I had no idea what that was, but now I have some people who work there as patients, so I'm gonna ask more about that.
Go right out and ask them about Scrimshaw. But you can tell I've spent a lot of time at Mystic Seaport as well. So and just by the way, as a quick plug for anybody who's not been to Mystic, it is one of the coolest, fun little places to go with kids and to go enjoy and to take a ferry from Long Island to Connecticut, which, if you do it at sunset, can be one of the best cruises you'll ever take in your life. So,
yeah, it's a cool spot. I agree, and I'm always here to help if anyone does do that. I live right by downtown. So
you got Mike DePascale, your personal Scrimshaw tour guide. So a lot of people out there know you, right, for a number of reasons. You're partners with Dr. Jeff Kozlowski, one of the better known lecturers out there on the circuit, and you help run a couple of practices. So. And you're pretty active on social media, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've inspired me a few times to deadlift an extra 7 to 10 pounds.
I appreciate that. I was going to say, I don't know how many people know me, but I will tell you, I have probably 75% of the conversations I have with orthodontists are about CrossFit or lifting. And maybe the other 25 are, Spark or aligners or something like that. But yeah, I do love to talk about that.
We'll get into that. And by the way, I'm just going to throw this out there because I'm watching you on screen. You throw out like a, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. King of Staten Island. What the heck's his name? He's dating Kardashian, comedian on Saturday Night Live. Never mind. You already told me.
I'm not a pop culture guy. I wish I could.
Like I'm drawing a blank. Everybody out there knows exactly who I'm talking about, and like it's gonna hit me like a ton of bricks because my brain is like fried. I've been fighting this cold, and my brain is like on a fog. But before we get into like real conversations about your life, do me a favor and jump in and tell us a little bit, about how did you end up where you are now? I know you went to Rutgers Dental School and you. Right. And University of Maryland, first dental school in the United States, right? University of Maryland Ortho. But how did you get to where you are right now?
So all the way back from like, how did I even go into dentistry? I actually had no idea what I wanted to do when I was younger. And I think most people are in some semblance of that situation, at least at some point. My mom is a nurse. That's the only connection that I have to healthcare, but I knew I wanted to be in that in some way. And so when I was in college, I did a bunch of different things. I became a physical therapy aide as a job. I thought about doing that. I thought about nutrition, lots of different things. And I shadowed at a physician's office, optometrist, dental, and dentistry seems cool. So that was, I thought that was a cool space to be in. I got into that. And I had just missed unfortunately, the deadline to apply for the accelerated program. So got that extra year of college in there.
Right on.
Lucky you. So I went, did that, went into dental. And when I went through that, the ortho thing really came of two things. One is a lot of people that I spoke to when I was going down that path said some version of, if I could go back, I would absolutely love to go into ortho. So I kind of had that in my head. And I don't know if you know this, Glenn. I know some people do. I actually had orthognathic surgery for obstructive sleep apnea when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
So yeah, that was
I want to talk about that afterwards. I want to dive into that a little bit.
So I had obviously ortho after that, oddly, surgery first, which is not a common thing, and had upper fours out. So that's a whole thing we could talk about. Yeah. But that was a like very, very truly life-changing thing for me. I know you're going through, some of that stuff right now.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Ortho was a huge part of my life from there. And I kind of went into dental school thinking, if this, I'm going to do as much as I can. And if when I get there, nothing's changed my mind, I still have the grades, I'm going to go for it. So I did. So that's my ortho story. And then how did I end up at Kozlowski Ortho? That was, I don't want to say random, but it was the last place that I looked, and I was pretty fortunate when I graduated or was graduating. I had a bunch of good offers, and I was really close to one. And I looked online and I saw this little Southeastern Connecticut ad and came up here, which was fun because when I first came here, when I first spoke to Koz, I actually had no idea who he was, no semblance of that whatsoever. Had a great call with him and came up to Connecticut to check it out. It was going to be close to my family. Most of them are still in Jersey. And I loved it. We hit it off. I mean, we talked for hours the first time, and I went home and decided this is pretty much the place that I wanted to be. So it was the last place I looked. And when I came here, it's kind of one of those things you just feels right. So yeah, we had a great talk, and the rest is history.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, Koz is a great guy. And, right. I'd say, in dentistry, not just in ortho, every 5 years, there's another, maybe even shorter, there's a buzzword, right? Airway or TMJ or vulnerability. The buzzword right now is efficiency. Like everybody's talking about efficiency. Everything's about efficiency. And one of the people who teaches the most about that is Jeff. He's sort of the king of efficiency. And so you gave a lot of good fodder there to talk about. By the way, it was Pete Davidson I'm thinking of. You're putting out like put on like a Pete Davidson vibe here. But let's talk a little bit about being in a practice like his, right? Because again, in today's day and age, it's really easy to feel like you know somebody, right? I don't know if you're like me, but you look on your Instagram feed and you see the same stories, right? Over and over and over and over again every day, right? And you may not ever have met this person. Like I've never really spent time with you of any significance, but like I feel I know you a bit because every day, because of stories, I'm getting an insight into your life over and over and over and over again. So I feel there's a lot of people out there who probably feel like they know Koz, I think in person, he's so much bigger, if you will, it's hard to explain, but what's it like going into a practice with somebody who everybody knows? Do you feel like you get defined through them and it's harder for you to find your own space, or is it just the opposite?
That's a great question. I'll tell you on a slightly less serious note, it's easy. It's a bit easier if you have no idea who he is when you're coming to the practice.
Right.
So I had that going for me in the beginning. It's funny.
You pronounce it Kozlowski?
Yeah, right.
How do you say your name again?
Right. I was like,
Kozlowski. Nice to meet you, Dr. Kozlowski.
Yeah. So when I was a resident, I was talking to I was just on a Friday talking to one of my instructors, Tom Barron, who taught me a lot about the Damon system when I was there, which by the way has nothing to do with why I joined the practice. But I remember talking to him. He's like, "Hey, how's the job search going?" And I was like, "Good. I just went to this place in Connecticut." And he's like, "Well, where in Connecticut?" So I told him, and he's like, "Dude, you need to go." He was like, I was like, "Why? Who is he?" And so much so that I actually went down to. He was the MC at the forum when I was a resident. And I went down there, didn't even know that. And I sat in the room and I was like, wow. So that helps. Now on a more serious note, is it do you feel like you're in the shadow a little bit? I guess in some ways in the beginning, yes. But I will say as a testament to him, and I think this is something that you're not going to get everywhere. And I would say is really important as a mentor. If you have an associate that you really want to build up, he is incredibly humble and super easy for me to not live that way. I mean, it was at sometimes challenging, yes. And when I first started, when I'd go to meetings, everyone came up to me and said, "Oh my God, can I have your job? It must be amazing working with us." And I was like, "Nope, can't have my job.
Can I have your job? Isn't that sweet? Isn't that a really nice way to meet somebody? Can I have your job?
It is. Yeah. So it was awesome. But, you know, in some ways, yeah, it's a little bit intimidating once you find that out. And I think that working with him, for him, it could have been overwhelming. But if you ever come here and you know him, like you said, you feel like you sort of know someone, but you don't really. And if you actually spend some time with them, the office runs so well that it, like, the things that he talks about seem impossible. But if you came to the office, you would just see them happen. And that's how we live our days. So it's not quite as daunting, I guess, when you live in it and see it. But I would say, like I said, a testament to him. It's been, he's done a really fantastic job of kind of not just helping me grow, but also allowing me to do that in my own way.
Right on. And now you're a partner, right? You no longer, I don't say just an associate, but it infers a different kind of relationship.
Sure.
Now that you're on the other side of the table, if you were going to hire your next associate, what would you have done differently as an associate, if anything, versus, when you came in you've been there now 4.5 years, right?
Yep.
When you first came in, you acted and treated and did things a certain way. How would you look at it differently now, looking at it as a partner, that direction? What advice would you give to associates who are coming into practices, looking for practices, whatever you want to throw out there?
Yeah. So this is going to seem a little bit backwards when I say these two things in a row, but I would say a huge, huge thing is humility. And I'll explain what I mean by that. And I think I have that, and it was a big benefit. It doesn't seem like humble to say something like that.
I know, it's like great. It's like, I have so much humility. It's crazy.
But what I mean is I was very, very open-minded. Like, he was like, "Well, how do you bond brackets?" And I told him what I did, but anything like that, I went with it. And if you're going to be an associate for someone that you feel is a great mentor, I think a huge thing that you have to do is listen to what they say. And I know that seems like a silly thing, but people come out of school and they have all their own ways of doing things, and they think they want to do all things a certain way. But I followed his guidance with a ton of things. And I think, if I think about what would I do differently, not too much. I will say one thing that I struggled with in the beginning is I think I slightly, in terms of a learning process and trying to get where you want to go, at least in the orthodontic world, I overvalued my time a little bit. And that would be a whole thing that I could talk about. Time is the most important thing in the world to me. And I didn't, I think, ironically, put in enough time. Like that was a struggle for me, managing, like, when do I need to be doing this extra thing to really get where I want to be better for the office, for the practice, for myself. And when can I kind of back off on that? And I would not have gotten here if I didn't figure out how to kind of manage that. So I think, honestly, there's not too much that I would change, but that would be the only thing. And otherwise, like, advice that I would give besides that is pay attention. And that sounds silly, but I actually just tell you a little side story if we have a few minutes.
Sure, absolutely.
I was just out in California a few weeks ago at a lecturing conference for Spark, and my buddy, a guy I grew up with, who I hadn't seen in 11 years, I think it was. We figured out when we finally met. He lives out in California now, and we were best friends growing up, and we parted ways over some things. Like he went in one direction, I went in the other, and we didn't talk for a while. And he had a rough life, went through several forms of rehab and built his life back up after that. So he moved from Jersey out to California with nothing, like a backpack, no job, no friends, and now is managing restaurants and travels all over the country doing that. Didn't go through any of the schooling like we did, none of that stuff. So I hadn't seen him in forever, and I was like, man, we got to get together. And when I asked him, I was like, dude, I've been wanting to ask you this for like 10 years, since the last time we spoke. I was like, how did you do it? Like, how do you get out of that, going through what you did to get where you are right now? Because everyone's gone through stuff, but most of us haven't lived through that. And he literally said, I listened. And I said, what do you mean you listened? And he was like, I just paid attention to everyone that I got a job, and I walked into a room, and when someone knew more than me, I paid attention and I listened, and I took advice from them, and I talked to them, and then I'd move somewhere else and nobody knew who I was. And there would be a lot of other people talking about some really great things. And then I would talk to them, and I listened, and I just kind of built on that. And that's kind of what I did. Now, I didn't go through all that same stuff in the beginning. But I think if you've got a path like that, the best thing you could do is be a sponge, listen to all the stuff they tell you, follow that path, and then you'll have opportunities will come like they have for me.
Yeah, totally. I agree 100%. It's just, if you're lucky enough to surround yourself with people who know a lot or more than you do, just listen, take it all in. And, it's very, very easy to hear the soundtrack in your mind of what you were taught to do. Like, I've only been out of school a little bit longer than you, right? I've been out of school since 2014, right? So it'll be 8 years this year. But it's amazing how you leave ortho residency so sure that you know what you're doing, right? You're like, I'm going to bend wire so much on so many cases, and I'm going to do 8 bends and this bend and that bend, and I'm going to, and it may work for you, but like, how many cases did you really treat beginning till end when you're in residency? Should we say 20, 30, 50, 75, 100? It wasn't until I was in ortho practice for I'd say 5 years, maybe 5 years, where I treated enough cases to start seeing trends, like significant trends. Oh, I noticed, I always notice, my upper twos, I didn't have enough distal root tip or whatever it might be. And you start correcting. And I'm almost 8 years out now, and I'm kind of at that stage where I'm just beginning to see how little I really know. I have so much to learn, and you're lucky you've got somebody like Jeff as a mentor. But in today's day and age, with things like Orthopreneurs and Summit and meetings, and like you going to Spark-based stuff or Damon stuff, it is so easy to find a mentor or to find somebody who knows more than you and just to sit in the room and listen. And everything I hear about you, Mike, says that that's what you do, and that you're great at what you do. And so I got my spies out there, man. We're doing our pre-show study on you. But let's talk a little bit about something you brought up. You talked about orthognathic surgery for sleep issues. So my assumption is that you're class 3-ish beforehand with a maxilla that was a little bit deficient.
Class 2, very class 2.
But they took out upper 4s.
Yeah. So
which is not the way you would typically treat a class 2.
and also not do it with surgery first and take them out at the time of surgery. So now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was wild. Yeah. But so that was to get as much advancement as possible. I was I guess I was 18 or 19 when I went through my first sleep study. And I wish I could remember the numbers. I have them saved somewhere, the AHI and all that stuff, which we could talk about at some point. But I was sleeping about 2 to 4 hours a night, just about. Wow. And of that, very unrestful sleep, that was not good sleep. It was awful.
So you were only getting you're not talking about you were only in deep REM or what have you, or good sleep for 2 to 4 hours. You were only sleeping 2 to 4 hours. Physically
sleeping 2 to 4 hours. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, and I was in college trying to get into dental school. So not a great recipe for success there.
Oh, no.
So, and I didn't know anything though. I didn't know about CPAP. I mean, I didn't know anything. And I got a sleep study. And basically after that, they gave me 3 options.
Who told you? I just have to ask, because I'm really into the ortho surgical. So in my practice, patients come to me asking for it, but I do a lot of orthognathic with my surgeon. Yep. How did you end up going for a sleep study? Who sent you there in the first place?
I went to a sleep specialist, just a physician, mostly because, like I said, my mom's a nurse and she knew, she saw me and wanted to help me. And so that's how I ended up there. And when I went, they gave me 3 options, mandibular repositioning appliance, the 3 that you would know, CPAP and surgery. But I was way too far to do an appliance. I was 20 years old and I was like, there's no way I'm wearing CPAP for the next 75 years of my life.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, well, whatever you can do. And the reason I did surgery first was because I was in such a bad place that when I got offered that option, I was like, do it tomorrow. Like, I'm in, go, just do it.
And, you know, and the funny thing is I had when I was living in Seattle, I had a neighbor 3-4 doors down from me, nice guy in his 40s. And he says, yeah, man, I just want to let you, I wasn't ortho yet. I was just a GP at the time. And he said, yeah, I'm being treated at Stanford, and they're taking my upper and lower jaw and they're bringing them forward. And I didn't know much about this at the time. And I went to I was like, what? They're not doing ortho first? They're not setting your bite? They're not like, he's like, yeah, this is what they're doing. I went to one of my oral surgery friends, and he says, dude, when someone's fighting for their life, you do the surgery and you worry about the occlusion afterwards. And it turned out he ended up getting the surgery, changed his life. And he said it felt like someone took a mask off his face. Like, you know, one of those like one of those workout masks, the resistance masks. He said he felt like someone took a mask off his face, and he never knew that that's how you're supposed to breathe.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. And I mean, I'm sure you know this. People, you just get so used to living like that, you don't even know that there's another way.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And you know, I don't know if you knew this, but I'm in the process right now of myself being worked up to maybe.
I do know that.
You do? Okay.
I was watching that.
Yeah, you know, I just went through a sleep study. You know, most people would not refer to me as low energy, right? I don't wake up super tired in the morning. I'm a little tired. My wife recently in the last 5 years has said I started snoring pretty bad. You know, I do feel like I don't breathe remarkably well. And so I went for a sleep study to go find out. And my AHI is 14 or so, which is still mild, but there's sleep apnea there. I've desaturated down to about 89 at times, but my lowest typical is 92. So it's not horrendous, but it certainly is not great. And I am a class 2 skeletal, and I don't have a big chin button, so I look more than I really am, but I'm compensated. And I've got really no problem considering taking out 2 lower 4s, right? Retracting my mandibular lower teeth and getting an advancement while maybe doing expansion in the upper. I don't know. We're going to speak to the surgeon to find out, but talk for everybody out there. I would say the overwhelming majority of orthodontists are not orthognathic surgery as their primary choice, right? They're looking for, how do I treat this non-surgically, when I'll embrace the surgery in a heartbeat if it's the best option for a patient. Talk to people out there. Somebody went through it. What was the experience like as a 20-year-old, give or take? Would you do it again? I already know the answer because everybody always says yes instantly. But what would you tell orthodontists out there about orthognathic surgery in their practices and for prospective patients?
So that's a loaded question. We could spend hours on just this.
I know. Would you do it again?
Would I do it again? Yes.
Everybody answers yes like that instantly.
Yeah. So I wouldn't want to, obviously, but knowing what my life was like before I did it, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I got in 3 car accidents during that time just because I couldn't react in time. Like it was rough. And if you're going to change somebody's life like that, then absolutely, yeah, 100 times over, I would do it.
And it makes you work out better too.
Yeah. I think about that a lot. I'm like, man, if I had that kind of rest before that, how good could I be now?
Right.
But
you could lift 2,000 pounds.
So I don't, in terms of what to tell orthodontists, what to tell patients, I'm not shy about talking about that at all. Largely because what I went through, and I can talk through, what it's going to be like when I think it's warranted, what the recovery is going to be like, which by the way is way easier than I think it was for me 10 years ago. The way things are done now. Right. I was on a liquid diet for 6 to 8 weeks, and most of the time it's soft foods after that now, at least the surgeons that I've worked with. So there were some things I think that were even harder for me then.
Yeah. Nowadays, I think they say typically for 6 weeks, no chewing, right? You can have food, but you can't chew the food is what I know my surgeon will tell people for 6 weeks. And then you're good to go.
Yeah.
And we don't wire people shut anymore.
Right. Exactly. I was wired shut, liquids only.
Were you? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm sorry. But when you woke up from surgery that day, do you remember the actual feeling of what it was like when you woke up from surgery before you started swelling?
I remember being in the like post-op recovery room and feeling like, it was, I did not feel great after surgery. I felt great. Like, are you talking like, did I get relief immediately after that?
Well, what I've heard from a lot of my patients is that they wake up after surgery right before the swelling really starts because they're loaded with steroids and what have you. And they say, like, for the first time in their life, they take a real breath. Like they've never realized that they could breathe like that. But for a lot of people, right, they're still a little loopy, so they're not going to remember that very well.
Yeah, I don't remember that, to be honest. What I do remember is my mom being looking at me like I just got out of like a boxing match, which sometimes you look like right coming out of it. But no, I don't remember the immediate like after that. I do remember. I mean, when I got out of the hospital. And, what I felt like after that, completely different. I mean, what you're describing, yes, I wouldn't say that I remember that happening instantly, but certainly a few days later.
But people will tell me that they didn't feel a lot of pain. It was just a lot of swelling and discomfort, that you're basically numb in most of the places where they worked. So you're not popping painkillers left and right. You're just really swollen and, for lack of a better word, uncomfortable. And that, and that my surgeon, the one I used to work with in Seattle when I was GP, used to tell patients, give me 2 weeks of your life and I will give you the rest of your life breathing better or looking better or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I would say not even. What I usually tell people is the first 3 days are not good. Like, you're not going to have fun. The first week is pretty rough. And after that, it's pretty smooth. I mean, you'll be swollen for months, but it'll gradually go down. And to your point, I agree completely. I think it's a lot of just swelling and discomfort.
Right on. Well, I appreciate the insight on that. And again, I'm now with the days of social media, if I end up going through the process, I'm going to document it from beginning to end. But I want to sit and speak to my surgeon and find out what are my options. I mean, I already kind of know, but I want to hear what he has to say. And it's tonsils, adenoid, septum, or jaws, one or the other, right?
I did all of that as well. I've done I did the whole thing. So,
and I don't have tonsil problems, and my adenoids have been removed already. So it's either expansion skeletally, and I've already had septoplasty. It's either turbinectomy and or orthognathic surgery. And, most would agree that I could use the orthognathic surgery to look a lot better. So we'll see. But we talked a little bit about working out, and I know that's a huge part of your life. Anybody who looks at Mike DePascale on social media sees you lifting obscene amounts of weight or doing some really crazy workout. But you're a CrossFit fan, right? You're a huge fan of CrossFit. You've pushed some iron around in your day, right?
I sure have. Yeah, that's definitely my passion outside of ortho. I hope to be in this field for a very long time, but if something were to happen and I was out of this space tomorrow, I would go right and open a gym. I wouldn't even think twice about it.
Would you really? Is that, that's if you had enough FU money, as they say, you'd go open a gym?
Yeah.
Right on. Totally. And so, I mean, you've had some fun distinctions, right? Tell me one fun fact about something you did that's going to blow people's minds out there when it comes to fitness.
Yeah, this is a cool one. So this was, I told you, back in 2015, I had a ridiculous goal to see if I could run a sub 5-minute mile and deadlift 500 pounds in the same day. And that came from a bunch of, I just wanted to do something cool. And at that time in my life, I was powerlifting actually and running, which is not what most people would do, but I loved running. Yeah, it's very weird, but I loved running and I didn't care because I loved it. So I did it anyway. And I used that at that time that was my way of being in my own place, my sanctuary, and is where I could prove to myself that I could do some really cool stuff. And most people listening to this probably not going to know this name, but if you do, Alex Viada is an insane athlete who started a company called Complete Human Performance, which is like a hybrid training method. And I messaged him and said, hey, have you ever had an athlete that could run a sub 5-minute mile and deadlift 500 pounds in the same day or even at all? And he was like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, all right, cool.
Now you do.
Yeah. So that was, I don't know. It took me, I had been training pretty hard since then. I was already pulling over that, but I couldn't run that fast. So I ran a ton getting that down, and I ran like a 505, a 502, a 501 a couple of times. I got real close. And one day I ran a 453 and went to the gym 2 hours later and pulled 500. And then I went back to Alex Viada. I was like, hey man, did it.
It's Mike DePascale. I'm reaching out to you from the emergency room. Wanted to let you know.
Yeah, right. So that's my claim to fame. And I'll never be able to prove this, but I don't think anyone had done that before me.
So for all of you underachieving orthodontists out there who are listening to this, and we know there's a lot of people out there who are really into triathlons and what have you, someone's gonna have to do sub 450 and more than 550. Like I think that's
There
the
you
next
go.
bar.
Yeah.
550, 450. How's that? Because you haven't done that. You've never done 550 a day and run a sub 450.
Nope.
A question for you, because years ago, when I used to run, which I loved running, but my knee surgeries now don't let me do that anymore. It was one of my great loves. I found myself running 5K times that, I was always within 10 seconds of each other, right? Like I'd push pretty hard. My heart rate would get up pretty high. And then one day I just woke up and said, I can endure more than I'm currently enduring. Like I just woke up and said, I'm tired of this,
Yeah.
And it was early in my time running. It wasn't like I wasn't running for 2 or 3 or 4 years at that point. I'd only been running for maybe 7 or 8 months. And I was running I forget the number. It was like a 22-minute 5K or 23-minute 5K, which nobody would say is slow, but nobody would ever say that's super fast. And I just remember, like, I woke up one morning and just said in my head, this is ridiculous. I can do this faster. There's no reason I can't. I remember watching that movie about Prefontaine. And he said,
oh man, my favorite runner of all time.
Right?
He hit me in the field with that. Yeah.
What makes you so great? He says, I'm willing to endure more than they are. Right.
Yep.
And I just remember I need to endure more. And I just remember running out and I shaved like a minute and a half off my best time in one run, which is crazy. Right. What got you down to 453 from like 501? What was you just willing to hurt more? Because it's not about aerobic capacity at that point anymore. What got you down there as a lesson?
Yeah, that's a great point. And if you do enough fitness activity of some kind, you'll understand that. So some of it is, exactly that. Just willingness to endure more. Now you got to have a good day. I'll say that. Like you don't run a 453 on a bad day, but
no.
It's that third lap, Glenn. That's what it is.
You got third lap. Yeah.
The third lap is where you got to hang on. The first one's not so bad. Second one, it doesn't really hurt that bad yet.
No.
The last lap, you're just doing whatever you can. That third one is where you really got to hang in there. But yeah, it was that, exactly that. And I mentioned Goggins, who I knew. You said that to me
before. By the way, beforehand, you said Goggins. They've never heard you mention Goggins.
Yeah, that's right. So I got to meet David Goggins, but long before I did that, and I think before most people knew who he was, I had been following him. And to your point, you probably know this. One of his quotes, or one of the things that he says is, when you think you're done, you're only 40% into what your body's capable of doing. And that I used to listen to him all the time back then. And he was kind of an inspiration of mine. So that was really helpful.
And for people who don't know who David Goggins is, he's a former SEAL, he's former everything for the most part.
Everything.
Yeah. And his book is inspirational. Can't hurt me. I have it right over here somewhere. I could go grab it. I know it's on here somewhere. It's got a white binding, if I'm not mistaken, but it's can't hurt me, right? And basically, he was too intense for most SEALs. Like when he went through, he's the only guy to go through, I think, the basic underwater, demolition, whatever it's called, the basic training for SEALs 3 times, right?
Yep.
And he was too intense for them, which is kind of crazy. And he even tried out for Delta and almost made Delta. Spoiler alert, didn't make it into Delta, but he missed it because he accidentally made a wrong turn, not because of anything else. But he got disqualified. But his stories are incredible of his ability to set a goal and do it, right? And he's arguably the greatest aerobic athlete of our generation.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
The other part is, I think one of the benefits I've had, particularly with fitness stuff, is totally naive. Like I didn't even realize at that time how big of a deal that would be. And maybe it's not that big of a deal, but like how few people could actually do that. I was like, all right, I think I could probably run a 5-minute mile. I mean, I'm going to have to work really hard. And I was like, I can already deadlift over 500 pounds. I just have to hold that strength. Yeah. So some of the successes there have been like, I just don't really think about what shouldn't be possible. I'm like, all right, I want to try this. So I'm going to go for it.
It's awesome. And 2 things come to mind. Number one, a guy built like you running a sub 5-minute mile on the track. People are moving out of the way really fast. That's all. Number one. And number 2, you said something there which is worth jumping on for just a second, which is you didn't know if anybody else had ever done it. You kind of felt like it was a big deal. But we all face we can all face consequences or challenges in our lives, whether it's been done before or not, whether it's a world record or not, whether it's, hey, I want to run a sub 10-minute mile. I want to deadlift 200 pounds. I want to have a practice that's yay big, whatever it might be. There's such a huge lesson in setting a challenge that's a stretch goal for yourself and then achieving it. Because the second you do, I mean, not that second, because that second you're done. But once you get there, at the end of that journey, you realize there's another level you can get to and say, hey, maybe I can run a sub 450. Maybe I can run a sub 445. And there's very few times in your life where you're going to set a goal and you're not going to achieve it if you mean to get there. And I've only seen it once in my life. And I tell the story a lot. When I was a GP, I was treating a guy who was the number 10 miler in the United States at the time. He was early 20s, and he was the number 10 miler, built unlike you or me. Guy was like 6'1" and like legs up to his armpit, right? And the rest of him was one giant lung. It was like a homunculus drawing, sort of gone wrong, right? And he was running, and I think the number he was running a 342, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And at the time, a 342, I think it was, or something like that, was number 10 in the U.S. And while we'd always talk as a GP. You really sit and talk to your patient. You're waiting for him to get numb. You're making a provisional, right? You got time, and we were talking, and over time we had a lot of conversations. And he said he was quitting. I said, "Why are you quitting, dude?" He says, "Well, I'm number 10, and I'm 10 seconds, or he was number 3. I forget what he was, but he was 10 seconds off the U.S. record." And he said, "I sleep well, I eat perfectly, I train hard. I physically can't go any faster than I am right now." And it was so crazy to me to see a guy who trained his whole life to be this, right? That's all he wanted to be. And he had completely in his mind gotten to a very comfortable place that I gave it my all and I'm done. And there's no reason for me to chase this folly any longer. I'm going to become a coach because I will never, even on my best day, get to this. And that's like, unless you've gotten to that level, which very few of us have, you can stretch your limits over and over and over again, right?
Totally. Yes, absolutely. And a big part of that too, people ask me often why I still do what I do. And I have a big stretch goal in CrossFit to make it to something called Wadapalooza, which is a big competition in Miami. I want to do that as a master's athlete, which actually starts at age 35. So I'm
35? What the heck am I? At 54, am I like the elderly classification?
No, it goes all the way through there. It's kind of a low age to start. It's kind of funny, but to be honest, I probably never get there. It's a pretty lofty goal.
Not with that attitude, you aren't, Mike. Come on, man.
No, it's not. That's the point, though. It's not that like I'm trying hard every day to get there. But people are, when people ask me that and I say honestly, do you think you'll get there? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. There's a lot of, but some of the best CrossFit athletes in the world are my age. So they're all going to be there with me. But for me, it's about the process. And that's what I explain to everyone. It's about the journey to get there, all the stuff that I get to do on a daily basis, the people that I get to meet, the competitions that I do leading up to that, the stuff I learn about myself. So it's really not, to your point, it's not about the end goal for me at all. It's about enjoying the ride to get there and how I become better at things while I'm doing that. And if I ever get there, like you said, there's the next thing's going to be right there waiting for me, right? Your brain, you'll recover a little bit, you'll smile about it, and you're like, okay, cool. What's next?
And that's like a great place to sort of end this, because we talked about a lot of great stuff today, but understanding that the journey and in my 50s, I don't, sometimes as achievers, as people who are, I don't want to say achiever because that's haughty, but as people who are driven, right? Driven to have a great practice, driven to be great orthodontists, driven to wake up every morning and work out, driven. You tend to, this is me coming back at myself, I tend to miss the journey. I'm looking, I want to get 5 minutes and 500 deadlift, right? Well, what about enjoying the 485? What about enjoying the 475? Last month, I remember when I was running, I would run with my friend's father. He was in his 50s, I was in my 30s, and he was fast. He was an Ironman, really, really great athlete, and I could keep up with him, but I was 20 years younger. And I always be like, man, I'm only running at the time, let's call it 7-minute mile. You know, I'm only running 7-minute splits and da-da-da. And my friend just took me aside. He's like, you realize my dad's been doing this whole life. And he goes, do you realize how many people are sitting on a couch, eating ice cream, watching TV, who are not running at all? He says, just be happy the fact that you're running, you're taking care of yourself. And the journey is the name of the game, because, you know, we can sit here when you're 80 years old and talk about how you ran a 5-minute mile and, you know, you deadlifted 500 pounds. But the process is that you were in great shape and that you were able to move comfortably. You were able to sit, you were able to stand, you were able to, like, you'll remember that when you're 80 years old, more than likely, is, man, I was in great shape. Man, I felt good about myself. Man, and I think that can be applied across all borders in our lives, whether it's practice or family, fitness, religion, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, your friendships, like you reached out to your friend of 11 years. Like, to me, I'm about to do a 5-Minute Friday in the next few weeks on +1, on making every aspect of your life just one better. You don't need to put up 500 pounds on the deadlift. Try to put up 2% more than you're doing now. Just put up a little bit more. And if you do that every single day and enjoy the process along the way, man, you'll have a fulfilled life, right?
Yes, absolutely. One thing I tell people, I don't coach CrossFit right now, although I'll probably get back to that space at some point. But even in general, I have that same exact thing. I got something on my board in my gym that says 1% better every day. And it's pretty much exactly what you said. That's part of the process, right? You just got to get a little better every single day at whatever you're doing, whether it's orthodontics or whatever else you're doing with your life. And I think that helps you enjoy the process if you focus on just those little things.
Amen. So I'm going to ask you before I let you go, give me 1 or 2 goals you got in your life. Could be anything. You got any goals that you've set for yourself?
Wow. Okay. Like personal goals or professional goals?
Any goals. I want to catch 300 fish one day. I don't, what goal. Okay, and if you hang out with Koz, that could become a lot. That's a huge goal right there. Yeah, but like, what's a goal in your, what's something that we can look forward to you trying to achieve over the next whatever amount of years?
So I'll give you an orthodontic one because it was the first one that came to mind when you said that. Have you ever read the book Built to Last?
Yeah, yeah. Great book.
Okay.
That's Jim Collins?
You got it. Yeah. Jim Collins. Yep, exactly. So then you would know he's got something called Big Hairy Audacious Goals.
The BHAG.
The BHAG, exactly. So I have a personal BHAG and a professional BHAG. I'll throw both out there. So professional one is, I really, truly want to completely change the perception of aligners in the orthodontic world.
Awesome.
And personal one is, I want every single person that comes in contact with me to be better just because they knew me.
It's awesome, man. That's the greatest ending to any podcast I've ever had right there. That's seriously, it's been good spending some time with you here, and you've inspired me online many, many times just by seeing your social media posts. My left knee and my right shoulder hate you, but I really like you a lot. But thank you for all the inspiration you put out there for everybody. And I just hope we get to spend more time together at some meetings and maybe in your office at some point.
Absolutely, Glenn. Thank you very much for the time. And I can say the same about you. I love what you're doing, and I think you do lots of awesome stuff for the profession. So thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Well, let's just keep on doing it, right?
You got it.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. And say hi to Koz for me.
Will do.
All right. Take care.
You too, Glenn. Thanks.